Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be jumping back on the 54 Ford F100. We're going to be doing lots of cool stuff to this thing. We're going to do a bunch of patch panels today. We want to get this cab ready so we can get it over to Cowboys Customs for some paint. And then tomorrow when we get that thing over there, we're going to be picking up the frame. The frame is fully finished, so we'll get some video of us doing that, putting the frame back together and getting it back to our shop. So follow along. And before we get started today, I just want to give you guys a thank you for watching the videos, all the new subscribers, old subscribers, anybody who's in there commenting. We appreciate it. We love you guys. And I just wanted to say a thank you. And if you haven't subscribed already or hit that like button, any of that, do it down there. It really helps us out. Appreciate it, guys. Let's get started. All right. So today we are going to be filling this panel in up on the cowl there. We are going to be filling a panel in down here, if I can get to her. That is the old battery access box right there. We're gonna fill that in because the battery is no longer gonna be located underneath the cab on the frame. We're gonna be putting it inside the engine bay somewhere in here once we get it all put together. So that'll no longer be there. They're gonna have a full interior in this car, so we just want that panel welded in so it can't be removable, all that good stuff. And then the final patch that we're gonna be doing is just filling this guy in right here. But first, I think I'm gonna start out with this top panel. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna use this panel. I thought about making a brand new piece of metal for this, but it has contoured shape in both directions. We've got shape here, and we've got shape here, and then we've got shape here as well. So by having all those different shapes, it's not that that panel will be too hard to make. It totally can be done. But this panel right here is pretty much already the right shape for it. So what I'm gonna do is, I was kind of already looking it over. I'm gonna suck it up real nice and close over here, give myself a few tacks. And then on this side, I've got a little line here. This has a little bit of a flange on the side. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it here for a relief and a cut here for the relief. And I'm gonna fold that flange up to just kind of fill in the gap here instead of taking another little piece of metal and filling it up. I thought about doing that as well and just filling that in, but I'm like, hey, why not just use that metal that's already there in the flange and be good to go. After we get it in place, we're gonna have a little bit of gap right up in front there. So if the gap isn't too big once I get it in, I'll just use, you know, the welder and fill it in. I've filled in bigger gaps before, it's not too big of a deal. Or I might take a little sliver of metal, the length, and then just weld that in there. We'll see once we get down that road. But I'm gonna jump on this first because I think this is gonna be the biggest, longest panel to take care of. And before we get started welding and grinding and all that stuff, I just wanna give a big shout out to Katie. She's been putting in tons of work with the video and all the recording. There was only one Katie injured in the last making of the last video on that truck right up there. So I'll give a little background story on that one. She was recording with the phone while I was doing a bunch of welding. And, you know, they went fine, all that good stuff. She got some really cool footage of the welds and all that stuff. She was working her magic and trying new things. And then by the end of the night when we went to go to bed is when she felt it. You want to tell them a little something?
Flash burn is the worst.
Yeah, she was messed up. She burnt her eyes. We had to take her to the doctor the next day. They got her a bunch of stuff. She was out for about 2.5 days with burnt eyeballs. So everybody give her a thanks for, you know, getting those badass shots that she's been getting. We're going to try a new way. We still want to get some really cool shots and stuff like that, but we definitely don't want to, you know, injure ourselves or other people and things like that. So we'll figure it out. We'll get some more cool footage, but I wanted to kind of share that little bit of a story. You guys will see that video series up there a little bit later. I don't want to show too much, but yeah, thanks, Katie. Woo! So far we've got all the metal cleared up and everything's fitting really nicely, as you guys can see. So what I'm doing here, I'm just going to explain a little bit on how I'm doing it. If you guys see in the time lapse, once we got everything fit, you know, I level myself out, because the last thing you want to do is you don't want the metal to be lower than one side or the other. When it's lower and you're trying to grind out that weld, you're definitely going to have a dip there and you're going to have to fill it in with mud. Typically you can come back from the underside of here and hammer and dolly, but there's a bunch of stuff in the dash in the way, so that's going to be kind of hard to do. So first step is just get this thing metal fitted out really nicely, get everything nice and level. So what I like to do is I take my flat edge of my hammer or a screwdriver, and you can level them out like that when you're doing your tack. From that point on, we get it kind of just all tacked in a few spots. And then I always space out my tacks right away. So as you can see, I kind of went here and then there and there and there and there. And then when I do my second set of welds, I'll start here. And then if they're already close, I'll just go on to the next one, but I skip one. So I did this one, skipped that one, did that one, skipped that one, did that one. And then up here, we didn't have a bunch of them. So then I started skipping every tack and putting a tack in between all the way through. Now on this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this one now. Instead of how I started with it, I'll start with this one and then skip and then so on and so forth. So the reason for that is to keep the heat out of the panel. You don't want to go and just tack a whole bunch and stuff like that. So I'm spreading out my tacks so the heat will disperse. So I haven't hit this with air or anything. I just got done welding it and tacking it. I can still touch it with my hand. I'm not going to go right on the tack or anything like that, but this is not hot at all. So that's how I'm dispersing my heat. So after I go around one full, tack, skipping a tack every single time, I'm going to just take about 2 or 3 minutes. A lot of people hit it with an air gun. That's totally fine too if you're in a hurry and need to get this thing cooled down. But if not, I'll just take 2 or 3 minutes here, do something else real fast, let this cool back down, and then I'll come with my next round of tacks, and then I'll start with that one, like I said, go, let her cool down, and then I'll start with this one again, skip. And I'm skipping, so you're giving an inch all the way through. The other thing you want to look for is when you see the little heat ring around the tack right there, you want to make sure the tack is penetrated very well, so when you're grinding it, you don't grind it all off and then you have a seam there again. But you don't want your heat ring to be no bigger than the size of a dime. So you can kind of see right there. I don't know if I have a dime in my pocket. Let me check. We'll go ahead and test that theory. But anyway, when you're welding, you don't want that heat ring no bigger than a dime. So there's a dime. Look at that. It's smaller than a dime. So if you keep it smaller than a dime, you're not going to have a bunch of warpage and all that other stuff. Everybody always talks about when you're welding sheet metal, how it warps it, put too much heat into it, things like that. So if you're paying attention to those little things, you're just going to make your life so much better when you're metal working it. I learned from a guy that I used to work with a long time ago that started out with body work is it all is a waterfall from the very beginning. So, spend more time on your metal work, your fitment, your metal work, your welding, than you spend less time on body work. Spend less, and then once you get to body work, spend more time on your body work, same thing, so then you have less time prepping and so on and so forth. So it starts with the foundation of what you're doing. So don't just half-ass it and go right away and just hurry this thing up. This is the foundation. Start nice, and the product, the final product and finish is going to be just as nice as when you started if you take your time. So we'll do this round of welding on regular instead of time lapse so you guys can see how quick and easy it is, how long I'm holding my tack for when I'm in there, and all that good stuff. So let's roll. just like that. And like I said, now look, my hand's on it. I can still touch this piece of metal. I'm not touching right on the tacks, obviously they're hot as hell. But I can touch this metal here. It's not too hot. If you can still touch the metal, you're good to go. You're not gonna get no warpage. And as you can see, did my same little skip. And if you just keep doing that process all the way through, eventually all these little holes are gonna be filled up and you're gonna be fully welded. One other little trick that I like to do is, if you got a seam that you're welding, like the body side right here, it has a rounded edge, right? So there's a lot of metal right in that area, whereas like over here where I bent out the flaps, it was just a real thin piece of metal. So while I'm welding this side right here, this is thin, this is a little bit thicker. So I'll concentrate my heat towards the thicker side of the metal and bring the puddle over this way real quick and then bridge the two. You don't ever want to start on your thin side of piece of metal, because then you're just going to constantly have blowouts. Like this very last one I did here, it took me a few little tacks to get it all the way through. That one kind of blew out right there and I had to build up the tab or the tack a little bit and get it to bridge over. So always keep that in mind when you're welding. If there's more structure on one side, start your heat there, bring it over to the thinner side. That's going to help you keep heat down and blowouts and all that stuff too. And you know, making sure that your welder is on the right settings. You don't want to go on a setting that is you know, made for welding 1/8 inch steel and come to this, you know, 22 gauge or whatever this is, 18 gauge, you know, and just blow it out. So knowing your settings, you know, practice before you go to do something like this with some regular sheet metal, things like that. So otherwise, that's my rant and rave. See, still I can touch it, she's not hot, everything's good to go. I'm gonna let it cool down for another minute or two and then we'll make another round. Another little quick tech tip for you guys is when you're doing your metal work and stuff like this, if you got multiple metal projects on this vehicle that you're working on, like I said, I've got the one over there and that one over there, what you can do so you're not rushing yourself and warping that metal is bounce around a little bit. So right now while I'm waiting for that one to cool down a little bit, I can jump over to this panel right here and I can start cutting it out and shaping it out. And once I'm done cutting it out, I should be ready to do another little piece there. And then, you know, weld it out. And then when I'm waiting for it to cool, I can go over to that battery tray box and grind out there and clean up the metal and get it ready for the weld, prep it out and get ready to go. So while you're waiting for that, find other little projects to do so you don't rush that project and end up warping in your metal. So just another little tip, fill your time in so you're not standing here waiting. Hopefully that thing cools down and then you rush back to it and end up warping your metal. So check this out. We are all finished up. All the welds, all the tacks. Everything is good to go. And like I said, while I was waiting for that to cool down in between tacks, I jumped on the gas lid side over here and I just started, you know, every single time I was letting it cool, just started working on it. So first, I shaved out my template, which my lines that I had on there, that back line, you can kind of see the Sharpie mark around it. I don't know how I did that first try because you can't just go inside and trace the outer lip here. You can only trace the inside lip and that's where I did it there. But I about nailed this dead nuts on. So after I got it all trimmed out and kind of cleaned up, I went through here, cleaned up all the primer, and now we are ready to start welding this on. And just look at this fitment. Kind of just hold it up here. It'll look better once we weld it in, but that thing just fits in there like a glove. I'm excited about that. Like I said, we'll get it fine-tuned when we get ready to put it in. I think I like it just the way it is. I'll just kind of get it fitted in there a little better and start tacking that one in as well. So now I can start working on this while this one is cooling down. The last thing I'll have to do, like I said, is I'm gonna build a little strip that goes along the front here to cover that little bit of gap. So what I'd like to do though is I'm gonna get a piece of metal that runs along this way and kind of shape it so we know that this height is gonna be the right shape there. So that is pretty much it for this little hood vent here. One thing I want to or kind of touch base on, if I could say, is now that we got the welding process done and we worried so much about not warping this metal with the heat of welding, right? Now, so many people don't think about this. Okay, now we're ready to grind this bad boy. They take a grinder, grind it all down, and you know, the grinder heat can warp the metal just as much as the welding heat. So as you're doing it, take your time grinding. If you got some welds that are sticking up way high, first what I like to do is I take my big grinder wheel, because that knocks out a lot of the metal off all at once, and I'll just go around here and I'll just kind of move fast, and I'll just start knocking off the top, you know, work this a little bit, come over here, work this a little bit, come over here, work this a little bit, and then just keep touching your metal as you're grinding it. Make sure that heat is still not getting hot, just like you would before. If it's too hot to touch, stop grinding, let it cool back down. Once you get the majority of the metal work down, then I like to take my roll lock disc on my angle grinder, and I'll come back and I'll finish it up with that. A lot of times, if I'm doing all the body work myself, I'll completely finish it out, roll lock it, and then DA it with 80 grit. But since I don't have all that equipment over here at this shop, it's over at Lane's shop, we won't go get into that big a detail. So just like I said, that's just kind of a rundown of what we want to do there. So that is kind of it. I don't want to fill you guys up with a bunch of welding and just, you know, videos of me welding. It's going to get boring pretty quick. So I'm going to jump on that back piece. I'm going to start getting that tacked in, and then I'll just kind of update you guys along as we go. All right, quick little update for you guys. We are moving along on this thing, just kicking butt. So check this out. Patch panel is complete, all ground down. I am super happy with that fitment. If you guys didn't see that before, where it was, right? I dare you to tell me where it was if you didn't know. I am really, really happy with that. I've been doing patch panels for a long time. Every time I do one, I learn a little bit more. I try a little bit harder to make it better and better and better, and that turned out amazing. I am so happy with that thing. But yeah, we've got this thing all done up here. I made a little piece of metal that went away all the way across the top, and we got all that welded in. So now we just need to grind and clean that up, which is gonna take a little while. Everybody knows grinding is kind of the long part. And then also we've got this, the battery door I'll put in. So what I did is I went in here and I welded all around the seam. But I only stitch welded it, so it was like, you know, leaving a little gap every so often. So then I went back with some seam sealer and seam sealed it all off, just so we don't have no rattle. We want this thing to be nice and quiet, no creaks and things like that. So, heck yeah, I'm happy with it so far. I'll check back in with you and show you guys this when we're all done grinding up. All right, so we just got everything all cleaned up, everything put back. We are gonna take this cab over to Lane's tomorrow and swap it out for the frame. Figured I'd just give you guys one more look at this thing. I am super, super happy with how the front of this turned out. That flap disc I had just fit right in there and just ate that thing up perfectly and gave it the right channel that fit along with everything else. Back here, you can kind of see the weld, you know, the welds are good, but the fitment was a big gap, you know. There's two ways you can fix that. One is you just go back with your welder and you kind of just tack back in place and you can grind it back down, but this thing is super solid. It's good to go. You know, we got to body work all this because it has a little bit of whoop-de-doos and things like that, so we'll hammer and dolly it, body fill it, make it all one piece. So the body filler will fill those in. I am not too worried about those little things. They're not pinholes by any means, so I'm not worried about that. Like I said, they're just a little bit of edge, you know, where the weld was. So, like I said, I am just super happy with how this turned out. I can't wait to get it over to Lane's and see what he does with it. I do appreciate y'all watching. I really would appreciate it if everybody subscribes, comments, you know, likes, all that good stuff. It shows me that I'm doing something right, that you guys are entertained. Maybe I'm teaching you something, whatever it is. When you guys do that type of stuff, it keeps me motivated. No matter what, I'm going to keep working on cars, but sometimes it's a little, you know, it just kind of gets to that point where, do I record everything that I do so you guys can see it, or I just go and get it done? So when you guys show me that you're into it and things like that, it really motivates me to whip out that camera and spend the extra time recording it, because it does take a long time. This I could have had done a lot faster if I wasn't trying to look at different camera shots and what I was going to say next and build the whole video. So on that note, appreciate you guys watching. We'll catch you in the next one.